time, Bob. Guess what?
Bob Bourke is the mechanic at large.
Hi, I'm Bob Bourke. Welcome to Mechanic at Large. Today's show we're going to talk about paint and preservation, how to fix up some little rock chips and give you an overview of some bodywork. This is my trusty old van. When I'm out and at large, I seem to pick up a lot of rock chips in the front of this thing. I don't know if that's from traveling too many back roads or following too many gravel trucks. Take a look down in this area. You can see my paint is getting a little smacked up. I got a whole bunch of these little craters like this with rust spots in them. If we don't do something and fix those up, pretty soon they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually I guess the hood would rot off. What we're going to do today is a couple different things. We're going to fill some of these with a little bit of touch-up paint, and then we're going to spray paint a little section of this hood. Let's get started. I got to set these things down. I'm going to spray paint a little section of this for you today, a couple inches wide, just to show you how it matches up and if you think that that'll be suitable for your purposes. We need some masking tape and a few old newspapers. I got some of that stuff here. I'm going to set that there. We're going to use some little spray paint that we bought that's supposed to match this paint perfectly. What we need now is just some newspapers, and let's cover up a little area and tape it down. I'll set that tape holder there. That should work. I'm going to take a little masking tape. I'll start over again. Get rid of that piece. Tough stuff to use here. This is just the same as household masking tape or whatever. We want to make it, use it to hold our paper in place because we don't want to spray any more than we have to. If you're going to do some touch-up and spray painting, only cover exactly the amount of area that you have to. Don't do any more than is necessary because, as you're going to see, it's difficult to get a perfect match without leaving a little bit of a line. Now you can see these little chips in here. What we're going to try to do is blast this with some touch-up paint and see what we get for a finished product and see if that'll make us happy. Make sure you cover down here, anywhere that paint's going to go. Do this on a calm day, not a windy day, or you'll be really unhappy. You'll have the whole rest of your vehicle or your grill painted. I'm just going to run this, well, I'm having trouble with this tape. I think I'll set it down here. See if I can work with it there. I'm just going to run this across here and put one piece of paper underneath it. Like that. Okay. The reason I'm going to do this before we do the little touch-up paint with a little applicator is because with spray paint, you've got to put it on in a couple coats. Most spray paints now are quite runny, and we don't want it to run, so we're going to put several light coats on there, and as it gets tacky, we'll go back and touch it on with another one. If you want to rough this up a little bit, the surface, you should do it with about a 400 grit paper. I've got a little bit of that here. That's a very, very, very fine sandpaper. You can use it wet or dry, and all we want to do is just barely scratch the surface of this area. That just looks like it's dulling the finish a little bit. And that's about all it really is doing. It's just scratching the outside coat. Now I should give you one word of warning. I wouldn't suggest that you start this in the middle of your hood of your new Mercedes. Pick a point down around the tailgate of the trunk lid or something inside. Do a little bit of practicing with this paint because it's not real easy to use and I don't want you to get in a lot of trouble. What may happen is you'll wind up repainting bigger and bigger and bigger patches to cover it until you've got your whole car painted. That doesn't really suit our purpose today. Wipe that off. There's going to be a little bit of dust in there. Okay, and I missed masking one piece. I better get that there. We're going to be painting over that. One more piece of paper. Newspaper's cheap. New hoods aren't. Let's lay that like that. Okay, what we're going to do now is put a couple little coats of spray paint on that. I've got a little touch-up paint that I bought from a department store that's supposed to match exactly the color of this paint. You can get this custom blended as well at wholesale automotive dealers. You'll need the paint code from underneath your hood on your vehicle. Let's give this a couple light coats. I've shaken this really well. Make sure you do that because there's metallics and different compounds suspended in it that have to be really well mixed. Okay, when you're spray painting, don't start on the patch you want to make. Start out on your newspaper so that you're moving at a steady speed when you come across. All right, that's how we want to paint. We want to go right across our patch so that we get our paint an even thickness. Let's try it. Beautiful. Always looks nice when it's wet. There's another pass. We'll make one more. And one more, I think, down at the bottom. Now we're just going to leave that alone for a minute. We want that to tack a little bit before we put another coat on. If you want to see how tacky it is, don't stick your finger in the middle of it. Touch the masking tape. All right. Second product, we're going to leave that for a second. The second thing I've got here is a little bottle of stuff that's got a little applicator in it. I'm going to roll this paper back and show you how we fill some stone chips. I don't want to get this on my new paint over there, so I'm just going to roll this back like this. And I want to show you how we're going to fill some stone chips on this section. When we're all done, let me grab a piece of tape here. I'll just tape that like that to keep it out of the way. And maybe another piece of paper here. When we're all done, you'll be able to compare what we've done with spray paint and what we've done with this. Now this is just a little bottle of original color paint. It's got a little fingernail type polish thing with it, just like that. And you might want to ask your wife or girlfriend to do this because they may be a little more adept at this type of brushing. All right, easy for you ladies out there. We're just going to dot on each of these little stone chips. We're going to just put a little dot of this stuff. Just like that, touch it on. And it doesn't matter if it creates a little bulge or a little bubble. I'll show you why in a few minutes. We're going to show you how to take that off. I'm just going to put about a half a dozen of those on there. We want to fill a little rock chip, and if it creates a little dome, that's okay. We're going to take a break. I'm going to shoot one more coat of paint on this as it gets tackier. And when we come back, we're going to go over to our bench and show you some rough body work. We'll be back in a minute.
Most repairs shown on Mechanic at Large can be accomplished by the average person. Should you feel uncomfortable attempting any repairs, you should contact a qualified mechanic or your local service station. Mechanic at Large and this television station assume no responsibility.
Hi, welcome back. I was just telling the crew a story here. I got a door off a car here, and we're going to show you how to do a little rough body work, with my apologies to all the real body men out there. We've got 4 holes in this door. I've got 2 of them filled right now, and what we're going to do is show you how to use some body filler and get these patched up. The first thing you want to do is make sure that any metal or any hole you're working on is below the level of the rest of your metal. This is kind of like crack filling in a house. You got to have a little bit of a bump when you're finished, nothing sticking out. I've gone ahead and cleaned up this area here. You have to grind this out to get really smooth metal. I used a grinder on it. You can use a wire brush, sandpaper, anything. Body work is relatively easy, but you've got to have a tremendous amount of patience. You want this area really clean where you're going to put your body filler. This is some Bondo or some filler that I've put on. You can buy it under a variety of name brands. Bondo is actually a name brand, but it's become kind of generic. We use it for everything. And this is a little more finished patch. I'm going to mix up a little bit of this today because I want to show you how to mix it with hardener. I've got a little piece of board here. I've got a can of what's called glazing putty. And it's actually the final product that you put on over your body fill. And the idea is that it's got less bubbles in it and it's a little finer grain. So it's the last stuff you put on before you finish. You can use it for body fill, but you're not supposed to use it over 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to open up this can and I'm going to put this on a board and mix it. I'm going to have to work really fast with it. This stuff has got a very quick setup time. I've got a little plastic spatula here. If you're buying body fill kits down in your hardware store, you'll get some little plastic spatulas. So we're going to mix this here, scoop it up, and put it on over that patch, like that. on that area. I just want to show you how flexible it is and how easy to use. And it'll take about 10 minutes to dry with the amount of hardener I've been putting in. Body men know exactly how to mix this. I'm not too good at it, but we'll do our best. Let's take some of this and put it out on a board. You don't have to worry much about this stuff hardening without the activator in it. Just get it on the board, get yourself about a gob, the size you need, cap that back up. And like body filler, this glazing putty is a two-part procedure. We've got a little tube here called hardener. What we've got to do is squeeze a dot of that onto this, mix it very quickly. Okay? Get the color all blended together. And for an amount like that, with glazing putty, you'll only need a dot of hardener about that size. That's enough. Okay, this tube will do that whole can that you just saw. So you just need a little dot of it like that. If you get not enough of this in, it'll just be slower setting up. If you get too much in, it will never harden, but you'll be able to grind it off and start over again. That's the one thing about it. It is forgiving in one way. The only problem you'll have is you'll have to redo your job. If you get too much hardener in, as I say, it may never harden, not enough. It may take 2, 3, 4, 5 hours instead of just a matter of minutes. Body men have got this down to a science because time is money. Let's scoop that up, take it up to our door, and we're just going to lay a patch on there, just like that. Now that's a big patch, and we've gone way too far over on our painted part. I just want to point out to you how to do this. Now you can see some little ripples and bubbles in here. I probably didn't mix this stuff up well enough. I've got a few lumps, but I've put it on thick. We're way over on our paint, so when we go back to sand this, we'll have to sand all that stuff back down, but I want to put on a big lump so you can see just how easily it flows. I'm going to take the rest of this and just put it over here on the edge of the door, and we'll check it in a few minutes and see how hard it is. I'm going to take this little trowel. I won't have time to clean it up while you're here with us today, so I'll set that aside. Now what I want to show you is this piece here. This was put on about a half an hour ago, and it's hard already. The first thing that we want to do is roughly work this down. And I've got a little body tool here called a cheese grater, or actually a body file. It's just like a cheese grater. We're going to just show you how it works. This is for taking off the real high spots. You use that just at first to roughly take down your real high mountains. I put a little bit of body filler on the edge of this door before. I'm going to show you how that works. Just watch the inside of that file. And you can see that that's a pretty aggressive tool for doing your rough work with. That body filler is only about a half an hour old, and you can see it's hard as bullets already. The next thing we've got to do is we want to sand this down, but we don't want to sand it below the curve of the door. All right? So we have to do something called block sanding. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this today. This is why I'm not too fond of doing body work, because there's a lot of work sanding to get it right. I got a piece of real rough paper here. What I want to show you is that we have to sand right across the place where the hole was and onto these surfaces. The reason is we don't want a dip in the middle. If we sand this by hand like this, our fingers and our hands will push sandpaper into the depression and into the softest spot. So we have to do something called block sanding. You don't need fancy tools. All you need is a stick long enough to bridge the spot you're filling. If you're going to be doing very much of this or a very big patch, you should be wearing a dust mask. Most of this stuff contains fiberglass and it's very tough on you. I'm doing a little patch today. From there on, move down to a finer and finer sandpaper until you get right down to something like 300 or 400 and block sand out that whole area. I've got a patch over here on the furthest away hole that I want to show you something about. This patch looks relatively smooth right now, and we're saying, gee, we did a good job on that. That's really simple. We've done all this in about 5 minutes, and we got a nice, neat patch. Here's how to check your patchwork. Take a spray can of primer and shoot a little bit on there. And it's going to tell you how good of a body man you are when that dries. Shoot some orange or gray primer on there, and just watch. While that dries, let me mention one other thing to you. If you have to do a body repair job on a panel, it's hard to get a paint to match. But if you do it at a cut line or an angle line in the car, you can sometimes get away with it. So remember, if you want to paint from there down, you're okay. From there to there is okay, or from there up, and it'll probably work all right for you. We'll be right back and finish up on our van in a minute.
Sometimes you can tell there's a problem with your car by its odor. Bob will be back right after this.
Welcome back. I forgot to clean up my little mixing knife. That body filler is really hard. The patch that we put on before, we shot a little primer over it, and the reason is we want to see if it's rough or smooth. I mentioned block sanding. What we're going to do is take a little block of wood, some fine paper, and we're going to sand across that primed patch. Our high spots will show up for us that way. Watch. Go right across the patch with the full length of the block, and watch what we're learning. You got to let your primer set up 20-30 minutes before you do this. We haven't spent quite that long, so it's just a little bit sticky yet. But if you can do this, you can see where the high and low spots are. Right in there, we're touching. Right over here, we're touching metal. Right over here, we're touching body filler. And right here. What this tells us is that we're going to have to put another coat on. We should sand all this rough again, put one more coat on, and do the same thing. Block sand until the whole surface that we're working on sands as one. If you don't, you're always going to have a little dip or a valley. If you look at a car that's had some poor body work done on it and look down the side, you know, like all prospective car buyers do, you see all those little dips and ripples. That's because somebody didn't block sand properly, and there's a little valley right by the body filler. We're going to leave that alone. I'm not a good enough body man that I could get this done even if we had a 6-week mini-series. So we're going to leave that, go back and check up our paint job on the van. All right, the first thing we're going to look at is the little dots of paint that we put on. I like this system of filling because it's simple and we're not doing very much or a very big area. We're dealing with one little itsy bitsy dot. What we want to do now, if you can get in here and have a close-up look at this dot, I think we'll work on that one because it's a big one. You can see that there we've got a little puddle of paint that's left around the top. This paint also, if you're doing this, you should leave this set up for about 2 weeks. The longer it gets to dry, the better. What I'm going to put on here is a very, very mild rubbing compound. I've got some here in a bottle. There's a little dot of it. This is very, very mild rubbing compound, very super fine stuff. What I'm going to do here is rub that on that spot, back and forth, and I'm going to try to rub the paint off of the other paint and leave paint in the spot that needed it. Now after a couple weeks, this paint will get really hard, but that way you won't take off the paint you don't want to. We're just going to rub this back and forth. We're trying to remove the paint that's up on the surface and leave the stuff that's in the hole. You got to be careful with rubbing compounds. Don't use a coarse compound. Get some super fine for doing this job because you can scratch the exterior surfaces with coarse rubbing compounds, and a coarse rubbing compound will go right through paint. I'll show you something about that in a minute. I've got some coarser stuff here. Just keep rubbing and working that. Well, I'm getting it there, but it's slow. I didn't say this would be easy, and I didn't say it'd be fast. Well, seeing as we don't have a mini-series, I won't work too hard on this. I'm going to wipe this off and buff it up. All right, I haven't got it off yet. You can see that I moved it down. What we'd have to do with that is keep on working on that, rubbing it back and forth across that patch until we get the top surface material removed and we left the paint in the patch. The other thing that you might want to do with this type of filling system, the beauty of this is you're only filling the little dot, but you may want to put 2 or 3 coats on. The reason is this stuff is thin. When it sinks down into the little valley, it's not going to be level with the rest of your paint job. So plan some summer to do this. Fill your dots, rub it off with compound, clean it out real good. Most of these compounds are in a wax base, so when you put your next coat of paint on, it won't stick. So what you got to do is give it a couple weeks, rub it down, keep working on it. Let's look at our big patch. Now this worries me. This is spray paint that's supposed to match identical to this finish. Let's have a look. Well, depending how you hold your mouth, it's not too bad. There's a couple things now that we've got to do. Once again, if you're using a spray finish like this, you're going to have to leave this set up for about 2 weeks to get it hard. What we want to do now is try to blend this patch in. And I'm going to show you how we do that. And I don't know how well this will work for us because this paint is relatively fresh. We're going to use a little bit of rubbing compound right on this edge and this edge where you can see. I've got some here. You can buy this in any hardware store or department store usually. And it's quite abrasive. You have to be careful with it. I'm going to put a little bit along that edge and a little bit along this edge. And I'm going to start rubbing that because what we want to do is rub out the line of that masking tape. Okay? This stuff is more abrasive. This is a heavier grade of compound. And we're going to work along that masking tape line. Let me get a little more. There's one other really good feature about having some rubbing compound around. I'll tell you about that in a second. As I mentioned before, you should try this on an area of your vehicle, not like me right out in the middle of the hood because I'm brave and adventurous. Try this on some area where you're not going to be embarrassed by people saying, look what he did to that Mercedes. All right? What you can do with this compound, if you keep on working it, it will actually work that line right out of there. I'm not going to have time to do that today. Okay, now that looks a little rough. Let's go back again to a fine, fine compound. Give it a dot of that. And with some care and some patience, you should be able to rub that line completely out and make this paint blend with this if it'll match. Be careful on base coat, clear coat paints. And a lot of cars are like this these days. You may want to go to the little spot filling system because you're not disturbing any other paint. If you're in desperate straits, try the spray paint and try rubbing it in as best you can. I hope that'll help you out. Be careful. Don't paint a big patch at once. Take your time. Hope you'll join us next time.
For a copy of this episode of Mechanic at Large, please send your check or money order for $24.95 plus $5 shipping and handling and any applicable taxes to the address on your screen. Or call 1-800-843-3658 and have your Visa, MasterCard, or American Express ready. Please specify the program topic you want and allow 2 weeks for delivery.